Hey, you guys, welcome to this week's edition of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought. This week, we're having on one of my favorite guests. Is that not nice to say? Should I not say that? He is, though, because he just makes me laugh. His laugh is so contagious. And that is Dr. Patrick Jones. Now, I don't even feel like I should have to introduce him because he's been a guest here several times on the Pantry Chat. And he's definitely somebody that I always turn to for herbal wisdom, but not just any herbal wisdom. When I'm looking for something really practical, really down to earth, and really accessible, Dr. Jones is who I go to. It's just hands down. For those of you guys don't know him, Dr. Jones has seen the power of herbs bless the lives of his veterinarian patients and his human clients for years. As a result, he grew an evangelical zeal to teach others about these wonderful plants. His passion has given rise to the Homegrown Herbalist LLC, a company that is dedicated to teaching others the principles of botanical medicine so that they can be more self-sufficient and have a better quality of life. Doc does a lot of lecturing, workshops, and herb walks to help people roll up their sleeves and get beyond the theoretical and into real applications. The culmination of his passion for teaching others is the Homegrown Herbalist School of Botanical Medicine. So we're going to bring Doc Jones on in just a moment. But the thing that I wanted to talk about with him today is actually herbal cleansing, because Doc Jones just actually released a whole book called The Homegrown Herbalist Guide to Herbal Cleansing and Supportive Therapy. This is a great book. Anything Doc Jones writes is a great book. Because he's just so practical, just so down to earth, and he makes it just so incredibly accessible, whether or not you have a lot of herbal knowledge. So that just always makes me really excited. And of course, you guys know we've been going through our own cleansing journey here. We're going to talk about that a little bit in this episode. And so I really wanted to get Doc Jones' thoughts on herbal cleansing from a DIY perspective as a home herbalist, what we can all do at home to cleanse our bodies of all the toxins that we deal with here in our modern world. So when I saw that he had this book out, I just knew that we had to talk about it. He gave me a little introduction to the book that I want to read to you guys before we get to talking. And that is that the world is full of herbal cleanses. Many of them are of little benefit. Some are downright dangerous. Learn from Dr. Patrick Jones what cleansing should really mean and how to do it in ways that give the body what it needs to achieve peak performance. This book covers the hows and whys of cleansing each organ and system and gives a full protocol for supporting and cleansing the body using highly nutritious and supportive plants. It also gives deep information on the cleansing actions of over 30 remarkable herbs. So before we bring Doc Jones up here to join us, we've got to say thank you to our sponsor of today's Pantry Chat. Today's sponsor is 4 Jars. 4 Jars is a company that has all sorts of preservation supplies. One thing that they have that I think is absolutely amazing is their different vacuum sealer packs. Not only do they have a great vacuum sealer, the machine itself, but they also have all the bags, all the rolls, all the different things that you need in order to be able to make your food last longer by vacuum sealing. Whether you're vacuum sealing fresh foods for the refrigerator just to last longer in the refrigerator, foods to go into your freezer, or maybe preserved foods like dehydrated or freeze-dried foods, they're going to have the ability to seal it for you. They're going to have the tools that you need in order to be able to seal that to make it last even longer on your shelf. And right now you can enjoy 10% off your first order if you use the code Homesteading Family 10. That's all one word, Homesteading Family and the number 10. No spaces in there. We'll make sure we put a link to them and that coupon code in the description for you. And without further ado, here is Doc Jones. Hey, Doc Jones, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, delighted to be here. It's always fun to visit with you.
Yeah, it's always great to get to have you. You are probably one of the favorite guests here on the Pantry Chat. Everybody loves it when you get to come on and share some of your wisdom about all things herbal with us. So it's fun to have you back.
Well, good. I think it'll be
Good.
fun today.
Yeah. Well, when I heard that you had written a new book, I got really excited because a lot of you guys, a lot of you listeners know that Josh and I have been on our own detoxing journey actually for about the last year. It was somewhere early last year that we did some lab work and found out that we had some really high levels of glyphosate, of all things, in
Oh,
our system. Josh had a few more things than that. And so we've really been on a detox journey for this last year. I'm actually waiting, Doc, in about 2 days. I'm supposed to get my retesting lab work back to see how the detox process has gone for us and make sure that we've dropped those toxin levels down. But the way I did it was I really went a working with a practitioner route, which was great. It's been a great experience. But I've got to say, it's kind of an expensive way to go, especially when we have all of these great herbs at our fingertips. So when I saw that you had written this book, I got super excited because this really puts cleansing into kind of like at reach for everybody sort of a topic.
yeah.
So yeah, this is
Well,
really
and it
cool.
should be. It's a very natural thing we've been doing for as long as people have been puttering around on this planet.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's great. So, I guess I want to start right at the very basic and the very beginning, because one thing that I've heard from a lot of people out there is this idea that we shouldn't have to do cleansing because we have organs in our body that does the cleansing for us. So why do we even have to do anything in order? In fact, I've even had people say all cleansing is a hoax, that's all quackery of some sort because your liver's busy doing it for you the whole time. So you don't really need to do that. What do you think about that?
well, I think in some ways they're absolutely right, and for most people, when they think about a cleanse, they're thinking about all kinds of things that nature and God never intended for to have happen to our bodies. So they're correct in that the organs are doing the job, but we also are living in a much different world than our ancestors were living in. Not even very long ago. And so it doesn't hurt at all to support and provide for those organs so they can do a better job. And that's sort of the tack that I take with cleansing is to support the organs that are doing it, not by overstressing them or beating them up or making their life miserable, but by giving them the resources they need to do their job. And when you do that, you feel better and you get rid of things. So
Yeah. Yeah, that seems reasonable. So would you say then that that cleansing is natural?
I think it's absolutely natural. I think it's something that humans have been doing and animals have been doing every spring forever. You go through a long winter of too much fat and too much protein and too much carbs because that's all you can store all winter,
Hmm.
right? So that's all you're eating. And every spring we would come out of our cabins or, the animals out of their dens or whatever, and the whole world is full of wonderful green things and fruits and plants, and eating that because it's what was available was the way that we used to clean out the system from a long winter of eating stuff that wasn't ideal. So yeah, I think it's perfectly natural.
That just fits in so well of what we've been talking about here on the Pantry Chat quite a bit actually, is like seasonal eating
Yeah.
And the benefits of when you're actually eating what you're supposed to eat, especially if it's nutrient dense and like right out of your garden or right out off of a farm that's really using really good practices for
Right.
soil health, is that you get those spring vegetables right when you need them in the spring, right when they are the most robust. I don't think it's an accident that asparagus and rhubarb are some of the early spring things that come out of the ground. They've got
Exactly.
these deep tap roots that are going down. They're grabbing all of these minerals that have gotten washed down in the soil, bringing them back up into their plant mass, and then we eat them. And it's like
Yep.
taking a vitamin, a mineral supplement, but in natural form in a way that's super available to our bodies. And it does wonderful things for us at the right time of year.
Yep. Absolutely. And seasonal eating is really smart. And if we thought about it for a minute and thought about, you know, what would our ancestors have been eating this time of year? It's very different than what we would, and we should think about it when we're sitting in the drive-through. But that's a good time to think about things like this. But anyway, you know, the amount of meat that we eat is excessive. I'm not a guy that doesn't eat meat at all. I eat very little meat because I don't like meat. It doesn't, or meat doesn't like me. But most of the meat historically would have been eaten in the fall and in the winter when there weren't other resources. You know, um, and in the summer we would be eating, like you said, all the greens and the fruits and the vegetables, and winters for starchy, meaty, fatty stuff, and spring and summer for all the other things.
Yeah. Well, you
But
think about what stores well during the winter. You've got
yeah,
your root
exactly.
veggies, you've got
Yeah,
your, maybe your preserved food if you're putting up some food, but that's going to be minimal if you're having to survive on it. You're going to do what stores itself well, just because you don't have the time and the energy to
exactly,
be out there canning things all day long.
exactly.
And then cured meats, like salted or smoked meats.
Yeah,
Those are the things that really store very easily.
yep,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
that makes a lot of sense. So when we're talking about cleansing, why would we want to do it? Like, why would we want to cleanse? What are the signs that we need to cleanse? Maybe is even a better way of saying it.
Well, I think those are two different questions, and they're both good questions. The first question is why would we want to, and the answer is because we're eating all kinds of garbage that isn't food. You know, and even the homesteaders, even the really devout, great homesteaders, we're still eating a lot of stuff that really isn't food. you know,
Yeah.
it's shaped like food and it tastes great, but it's really not food.
I
And
mean,
and
somehow Josh and I both got glyphosate of all things. Like we
well,
grow
yeah,
what 80 plus 85% of the food we consume, we're growing right here on ground that we know we're not putting glyphosate on. And
yeah,
somehow we were like off the charts toxic with the glyphosate. And so it's like
wow,
it's coming in somewhere.
yeah.
So yeah, it gets in our system.
Well, yeah, and it's wildly overused. I
Yeah.
mean, it's now part of agriculture to spray stuff with glyphosate as part of the harvesting process. Kill all the potato tops with glyphosate or whatever root vegetable it is. You know, and like none of that's going to get absorbed and it'll all be fine. We'll harvest it in a few days. It'll all be great. you know, and it stays in the ground for years.
Yeah.
If I understand it right. But yeah, so we're
I'll
eating.
tell you, it stays in your body for years. I can
Yeah,
tell you that because I'm walking
yeah,
proof of it. So yeah.
exactly, exactly. Because for a fact that, I mean, I've been to your place. I know how you guys
Yeah.
eat,
Yeah.
and you're not running to the grocery store to get, you know, GMO one white bread,
No. Chips
and
and
things.
chocolate. I gotta
Yeah,
say, those are our
well,
weaknesses. Chips and chocolate.
let's not be insanely extreme. I mean,
Yeah. But yeah, it's not coming in from our soil. We've tested our water. We've tested like everything that we can test. And we're getting tiny amounts we found coming in animal feed, but even that was not anywhere near enough. So
right?
we've cleaned up our animal feed, but it's persisted in our bodies for who knows
Yeah.
how long,
Well,
probably
exactly.
since we lived off of agricultural fields over a decade ago.
Yeah.
in California when they were spraying things. And so it's probably still in our bodies from that. Hopefully
And
now it's gone, but it does last.
yeah, it's because it lasts, it's cumulative too,
Yeah.
you know. So if you're not getting rid of any and you're continuing ingesting it, those levels are just going to go up and up and up. And we wonder why there's so many health problems in this country, you know, and and then you look at the things we're eating,
Yeah.
and it's just insane. You know, the things that are in the water, the pharmaceuticals that are in the water, because a lot of the pharmaceuticals that we ingest are excreted completely unchanged by the kidneys and the liver. You know, just get them out of here. We're not changing anything. We're just getting rid of them. They go right back into the water system. And so we're drinking all kinds of pharmaceuticals if you live on city water, you know, uh, and it's in the food. It's just, anyway, all kinds of bad stuff's getting into us. So those are reasons to cleanse. The toxins, but also the food itself, you know, isn't what we're supposed to be eating. The grains are so refined, the carbohydrates are so refined, that they're not moving along and getting cleaned out like they did in the good old days. You know, we're not eating fresh, you know, raw vegetable material like we would have done not very long ago to the levels that we ought to. We're not drinking water anymore. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the very first things I ask people when they come in, you know, on a consult situation: how much water are you drinking? And I get a lot of, you know, this kind of, oh, well, you mean like I do like sugar-free decaffeinated pop? Does that count? No, you know, that actually doesn't count.
Well, and I think to your point, I had a good friend who was very health conscious, but she had migraines all the time, terrible
Yeah,
migraines. And she went and she had worked with doctor after doctor. And finally, somebody said, I want you to measure the amount of water that you're actually drinking. And she realized that she thought she was drinking a lot of water, but she actually
yeah,
wasn't. And as soon as she increased that water intake, the migraines almost, I think she cut them down to a third,
yeah,
which is huge when you have debilitating migraines like that and it's stopping you from living life.
yeah,
But yeah, even when we think we're doing well, we're not always doing that great.
yeah. Have her take some lemon balm too. That's fantastic sometimes for
Ooh,
migraines for some
there you
people.
go. That's a good one.
Have me some lemon balm tea. That would almost count if it was for migraines. Water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fancy water. There you go. You double up. So,
Anyway,
so that's why we'd want to. Our bodies are slowed down by the quality of the food we're eating nowadays, and then we're getting toxins on top of it. And so it's like everything, the processing of everything is slowed way down, I think is what I'm
yeah,
hearing you say.
yeah.
And so we need to support our body in dealing with all these toxins. What's the sign then? Like, would we see signs that would tell us we need to cleanse?
Well, I think there's all kinds of signs. You know, low energy. Uh, you know, brain fog, susceptibility to illness, uh, digestive irregularities. You know, uh, just all kinds of things. Depending on what's the thing that's built up that's bothering you, you know, those symptoms could vary. But, you know, if you don't feel great and things are just not going well, why not? You know, why not clean up and give your body some? I mean, even if we didn't clean anything, we're giving fabulous nutrition to your body with all these plants, you know? So, I mean, if somebody said it doesn't do any cleansing at all, okay, great. I'm still going to do it because it's really good for you nutritionally, you know?
It's still a win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that you just touched on that I think is probably worth mentioning. Many years ago, probably a couple decades ago now, I was working with an herbalist, just for some increased health, and she asked me about my energy levels. And at that point, I had a couple little kids running around, and so I said something like, "Well, I get tired in the afternoons, but that's normal." And she said to me, anything less than having energy for your day until it's time to start winding down and go to bed is not normal. And that was
Yeah.
mind blowing to me because, in moms groups, it's kind of this, well, I'm always tired. I'm a mom. I'm always tired, you know? And she
Right.
was like, anything less than robust health is not normal and it's not healthy. And it's a sign that we've got something imbalanced in your body. And I think
Right.
in our modern world, we're just so accustomed to like, well, like the list of things you just said was like brain fog, low energy, digestive upset. Like, do I know anybody who doesn't complain of those
Right.
symptoms?
Exactly.
It's kind of normal, but it doesn't mean it's healthy.
Yeah. So if you're a human in a first world country, that you know,
Then maybe you should cleanse. Yeah.
maybe you should cleanse. That's
Okay. So we
right.
should just all do it. That sounds good. So when we're cleansing, what is it that we're trying to accomplish with our bodies?
So really, what you're trying to accomplish, and there's all kinds of disastrously bad ideas out there. I mean, such bad ideas. What you ought to be trying to accomplish is to support normal function. That's what you ought to be trying to accomplish. What you ought to be trying to accomplish is to eat things and ingest things that your liver and your kidneys and your guts and all the guys that are overworked and underpaid say, oh, wow, that's great. I've been dying to have some of that, you know, and they can do their job better. You know, it's nutritional, but it's also, there are chemicals in plants. There's, you know, phytochemicals in plants that our organs respond to in a very positive way. You know, there's diuretics that make your kidneys work better. There's liver tonics that make your liver work lots better. There's plants that make the gut more active and have natural fibers and stuff in it that are cleansing. You know, and so there's plants that break down excess mucus in the gut, like mullein, you know, or elecampane, and so you can give the body what it needs, and it'll solve its own problems. Really, is kind of the sum of it. Um, and when you do that, there really is a transformational change. You know, I had years ago, I was doing a YouTube thing, and I was doing a podcast or something on like a webinar on YouTube, and I happened to mention just, you know, in passing, you know, if you really want your life to change, throw a spoonful of burdock in your smoothie, you know, burdock root in your smoothie, right? And two things happened. First of all, when I got to work the next day, Lucy, who's my daughter and is the general manager of the whole company, said, "Did you say burdock during your webinar?"
Oh,
Because
that
she had
went
a lot of
flying off the
orders.
shelf.
She
Yep.
had a lot of orders for burdock. Um, number one, but number two, uh, I started getting emails. You know, about a week later, the emails start rushing in like, "Holy cow! I can't now believe how much better I feel."
Mm,
And you know, that's one plant.
yeah.
You know, and it's burdock does two fantastic things. First of all, it has lots of fiber in it, which is cleansing. It's all well, it does. Well, I'm not going to say how many things. It does a lot of things, but we'll just start counting. Okay, it's got a lot of fiber, which is cleansing. That's great. It has a lot of fiber, which feeds your microorganisms that are the good guys, which modulate everything. You
Right.
know, from neurotransmitters to immune support to digestion of a lot of things. I mean, those guys do all kinds of stuff. They outnumber us 10 to 1 for our body cells. Maybe we should be nice to them, you know? Number one. And it also is a liver tonic and it's a kidney tonic. So, I mean, what does burdock not do? You
Right.
know? And even just one spoonful of the powder of that, and it's safe when you're pregnant. It's, you know, it's just super safe. Wild margins. People are writing me, oh, you know, gee, I don't have to take ibuprofen for my sore knees anymore, and you know, I feel better, and my guts are better, and my psoriasis went away, and I mean, there's just all kinds of emails from one simple little thing that, you know, isn't expensive and tastes pretty good and is really good for you. You
Yeah.
know, and all they were doing is, you know, give the body what it needs, and it'll fix itself. You know, that's kind of been my mantra over the years.
I totally love that about herbs, that, you know, instead of like a pharmaceutical, it forces an action on the body. It like makes your body do something.
Yeah,
You know, picture your body being held hostage and like forced to do something.
yeah,
Herbs, on the other hand, work totally differently, which is why you have to change your mindset when you're using them. They work by nourishing your body systems to allow them to make the adjustments themselves that need to be made in your body. But in order to do that, you can't just like take a pill and call it good, right?
Right.
You have
Right.
to actually continue to take it. You have to take it regularly. You have to think of it more like food than you think of it
Yeah.
as a drug. And so it's a different mindset on herbs.
And the other beautiful thing about herbs is that a pharmaceutical has one chemical in it,
Right.
one chemical. And the plant has dozens of chemicals. And it's sort of like, you're giving, a buffet to your body, and it can say, oh, well, that looks good. I want some of that. And, oh, give me some of those. Those are good. And it just picks whatever phytochemistry or vitamins or nutrients it wants out of that plant based on its need, instead of giving it a popsicle,
Right.
Well, what do I do with
Well,
this? So,
the even better things beyond that is that a lot of times those different compounds that are in one plant are synergistic and they actually help each other to work better. And you
yeah,
look at that and you're like, wow, it kind of looks like somebody designed this.
right.
What is that? Like, how
Almost like
cool
he
is
knew what he
that?
was doing.
Somebody knew what they were doing. Like, whoa, let's go with that option. I
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
one.
And there's herbs, there's chemicals in that plant that make the other chemicals work better, that make them easier to absorb or eliminate, minimize side effects. I mean, it's a package deal. And we've gotten into this reductionist culture. It's the same thing we're doing with our food. Take all the nasty parts out, you know,
Like the
and
green things.
yeah, like the green things, like the fiber, like
Right.
the vitamins. Yeah. I mean, years ago, Chinese medicine I mean, they historically have used food as therapy. If you have this illness, take broccoli and have some cauliflower. They're doing all the herbs and acupuncture and other stuff too, but food was a huge part of it because food used to be medicine.
Yeah.
It used to have all kinds of stuff in it that they've bred out of it so that it's prettier and sweeter and lasts longer on the shelf and yada yada. But it's not the same stuff your great grandma was eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
if there was ever a commercial for homesteading, there it is right
yeah, there
there.
you
That
go.
was it.
Yeah, buy heirloom seeds, poke them in your own dirt.
Yep, yep, exactly. We
Don't
won't
spray
tell
them.
Josh that you said dirt instead of soil. That's okay. We'll just let that one slide. In our house, we all have our alarms that go off in our heads whenever we say dirt. We're like, was I supposed to say dirt or soil? No, okay. Dirt was good there. Okay, so you talked about some of the really bad ideas in cleansing. I think a lot of those come from these misconceptions of what a cleanse should be.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some misconceptions on cleansing.
Well, there's a lot of things they do wrong. First of all, one of the things they do wrong is they do it way too often.
Mm.
And some herbs are fantastic tonic everyday great things. Spoonful of burdock, spoonful of nettle powder in your smoothie. Do that every day for the rest of your life, and that's a great idea. But you don't want to take barberry every day for the rest of your life. You don't want to. Some of these herbs are a little more intense, a little more purpose driven, and we don't want to overwork and exhaust things. And so you should never do a cleanse that's painful, or some of these cleanses, like they think that part of the cleanse is that you be curled up on your bathroom floor in the fetal position wishing you were dead for 12 hours. That's part of the cleanse. And they warn you about it. We know we're having you drink a quart of olive oil and then taking lots of cholesterol herbs. And you'll wish you were dead, but you won't die, and you'll feel great in a few days after you recover. So there you go. Let's
Oh, that
not do
sounds like
that.
fun.
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do a cleanse, that you don't dare be more than 6 feet away from your bathroom. I mean, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's supposed to think about it. The effect on your body should be the effect that you would have stepping out of your cabin into a beautiful spring pasture and eating fresh vegetables and fruits. That's the effect. And sure, you're going to loosen up a little bit because that's lots of fiber and vitamins and things. That's normal. But it's not going to keep you from going to work. And it's not
Right.
going to be painful, And, it should be a much more natural process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I wrote this book, I did some research on internet cleanses. you know,
Oh, that
and
must have been fun.
there's a little section there of some of the warnings,
Mm.
warnings about awful things that are going to happen. And there shouldn't be any of that. I mean, if you read the cleanse and your eyes get great big and you start getting alarmed and thinking maybe I shouldn't do this, don't. Listen to that little feeling.
Yeah. Uh,
So over intensity, over frequency, anything unnatural. Drinking a large amount of oil is unnatural. You don't do that. When in nature is that going to happen? You
right.
know, and then there's other things. There's things that involve rubber hoses being poked places, and I mean, when does that happen in nature? And so I just think that do it in a way that your body has no trouble at all interpreting what you're trying to help it with.
Right.
Recognizes every single thing that came in and what to do with it. Those kinds of things. Um, so anyway, and then the other thing is people do cleanses where like they'll do a juice cleanse
Yeah.
and do nothing but juice or water for a long time. So people have prolonged fasting
Yeah.
where they only will do water for a long time or juices, and that's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
That's terrific malnutrition and stressful to you're stressing your organs because they don't have the nutrients they need to do their jobs. You know, uh, it's just a bad idea. It's not a natural thing. And intermittent fasting, for a little while, 24 hours every month or so, that's really good for you. I mean, they've done all
Right.
kinds of research on that. And prolonging your time between meals. I mean, there's all kinds of people who've done all kinds of crazy research and found all kinds of wonderful things about managing our eating times and having some little intermittent short-term fasts. Um, those are all good for us. And that's natural too, if you think about it. If our ancestors were living off the land, there probably were times, once in a while where you weren't getting anything to eat today because the deer ran faster than you did, you know,
Sure.
or the crops, we had an early frost, and so we're not getting any peaches this spring, and we're going to have a week with no food because there's no peaches, I mean, or
Right.
whatever. I mean, life was harder, and there were times when we weren't just constantly able to eat whatever we wanted. So
Hmm.
anyway,
Yeah. I love that. Those are great thoughts. And, being careful of what we're doing to our body. Um, Somehow we've lost a lot of common sense, I think. And I think that's just, there's so much information out there and so many experts now that are like, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And a lot of it doesn't make sense to us. And so we're kind of like, maybe I don't even understand what common sense is. I think we've stopped trusting ourselves
yeah,
because of all these experts that are out there,
yeah.
self proclaimed experts, maybe. But,
And
something that I learned early on in studying herbalism is the concept of ABC, that cleansing comes after activating and building your systems.
yep,
Like if you're just jumping in, you're like, I'm sick, so therefore I'm going to start cleansing, you're probably going to make yourself sicker
yeah,
because you need to build up and nourish your systems first. Now, the great thing about herbs is a lot of these herbs that you're talking about are actually doing all of those things at the same time. They're activating your systems, they're building up your systems because they're nourishing you, and because they're
right.
not doing this harsh cleanse, then they're helping your body to cleanse itself. So it's wonderful when they all kind of work together to do the right things.
And the difference really in a nutshell between the way you ought to cleanse and the way that we talk about cleansing and the way that a lot of the internet nonsense is when you're doing a cleanse, your body should feel like it's getting spoiled rotten,
Mm,
not punished,
yeah.
you know, uh, and that's how you'll tell.
You
You
should
know,
feel
if
better.
you if you have guys that work for you and they're doing a lousy job, you don't go in and whack them with a stick. You feed them and you take care of them and you make sure they have what they need. You know, I mean, it just the body, if we'll support it and feed it and give it what it needs, it'll be really happy and do its job much better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you talked about burdock. You were talking about, being able to consume burdock even if you're pregnant. Can pregnant moms and nursing moms do cleanses?
So I wouldn't do, so we sell a cleanse kit, you
Mhm.
know, and in the book there's a protocol for, you know, you don't have to buy the kit. There's nothing magic in the kit. But in the book is all the stuff, how to do it and what to take and things. But there are some herbs that I use that aren't safe for pregnancy, and there's some that aren't safe for nursing. But that's the case no matter what I'm doing with herbs.
Right.
You just have to be really, really careful. If you're pregnant or nursing, or if you're taking pharmaceuticals, those are the three big red flags that you really have to start thinking, wait a minute, hold on.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't do a cleanse if I was pregnant. I mean, I'd be too busy being on the Today Show and doing interviews if I was pregnant. But
Well, that's true.
anyway, uh, but you could do burdock and nettles,
Yeah.
you know, to just keep your liver and kidneys and everybody happy, and your guts and your microbiota. Everybody's going to be happy with nettles and burdock. You can do that while you're pregnant, and probably should. I mean, my wife has been a midwife for a long time. She's retired now, but you know, every lady she ever worked with was on, you know, nettle leaf and red raspberry and all kinds of herbs, which were mostly nutritive
Hmm.
during pregnancy. But you just have to make sure that everything's kosher with that little bambino, because sometimes they don't like the herbs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we want to keep everything safe, but it's a
Yeah,
great time of your life to actually be supporting your body with the
yeah,
appropriate herbs instead
and the
of
appropriate
doing,
foods.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of doing any sort of a harsh cleanse where you're actually trying
absolutely.
to remove toxins from your body or anything like that. You don't really want to stir up toxins when you've got baby on board.
No, no.
Yeah.
And the herbs that would and could do that, you know, in a meaningful sort of, okay, come on, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work here. They're not safe during pregnancy anyway.
Yeah.
So,
There you go. Just real quick, like, do you have that information in your book? Like which herbs you should or shouldn't
oh yeah,
use?
yeah. No, the
Great.
whole second half of the book is all plants,
Oh, cool.
and it tells you on each one of those if they're safe for pregnancy or nursing. So you
Perfect.
could, you know, theoretically, you could sort of put together your own little protocol by swapping out a plant here and there and doing some things. So yeah, that information's all in the book.
Oh, that's great. Now, what about kids? Because we're seeing a time where kids are sicker than we, I think, have ever seen
Yeah,
historically, as far as just, you know, lifestyle illness, let's put it
yeah,
that way.
yeah,
Between obesity and chronic disease and autoimmune stuff, we're just seeing
no,
so much illness in children.
yeah. Anxiety stuff,
Yeah, mental stuff.
autistic spectrum stuff, all
Hmm.
kinds of things.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't do, again, like pregnant women and babies. There are some herbs that are a little more intense than a 6-year old ought to be
sure.
needing. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if it's an adolescent, 12 and up kind of kid, and he's kind of having those kinds of issues and feeling groggy and grumpy, and I mean, more grumpy, uh, you know, you could certainly do a cleanse on an adolescent. If it's a little tiny guy, though, you know, nettles and burdock, fantastic food for him, fantastic cleansing properties. Why not? You know, put a little of that in their oatmeal. They'll like it.
Well, I think I
Me-
just found what I was missing in my parenting of teenagers here. If that's going to make them less grumpy.
That's right.
She's like, oh, you need to take your herbs. You
That's right.
didn't take your herbs today, did you? But then with those little guys, it's like it's back to that same concept. Like how are we nourishing the body in order for it to support itself, for it to support normal function, like you were saying, should be the goal of the cleanse. Um, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of gentle herbs out there that are totally appropriate for doing that.
Well, and feed them raw carrots instead of Twinkies. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
it's
Stop
if we
putting the
were
junk in.
yeah, if we were eating and feeding our little people like we ought to, we'd have way less of these kinds of issues. You know, a lot of it's got to be stuff they're ingesting. You know, I mean, there's
I'll tell you what, the key is a lot of times just get the stuff out of the house. I know the
yeah,
moment we had somebody gave one of my younger daughters a bag of like mini Oreos around the holiday. And we don't usually have stuff like that in the house. That's not just something we do. We bake plenty of our own homemade, healthy, good ingredient cookies, but
sure,
not that kind of stuff. the moment that was in our house, it became like this thing, this obsession of everybody that like, can we have the Oreos? Can we have the Oreos? And I was like, nope, nope, nope. Like, wait till we go on a play date and go share them with all your friends instead,
That's right.
like poison everybody, spread it out a little bit. But the interesting thing is when those aren't in the house, they don't ask for them.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. That's
amazing
right.
if you don't have that kind of food in the house, what your kids will actually eat. Like
Yeah.
they eat sauerkraut voluntarily as long as I'm not dangling Oreos in front of them on the other side.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's
And
get it
and
out.
we're hardwired. Our brains as humans are hardwired that fat and sugar are really a good idea.
Yep.
Because in the good old days, if you could get a hold of a little bit of fat and sugar, that's a lot of calories without very much work.
Yeah.
You know, but there were no Twinkies in those days. You know,
Well,
uh,
same thing with the dyes, right? Like our
yeah,
brain sees that dye, that red dye, and we're
yeah,
like, ooh, vitamins.
yeah,
Those are some
exactly.
sort of phytonutrients in there, like
Yeah,
berries. And it's not when it's an artificial food dye.
yeah, exactly. Well, I had, one of my children was really like if she ate sugar was it was terrible for her, and she was angry and mad and rebellious and just like this little Tasmanian devil kid, and so and I figured it out, like every time I give her something sweet, an hour later she's just a disaster. We figured it out pretty quick, and she and I had a no sugar club
Oh,
for years, and we said, oh, we don't eat sugar because it makes us feel lousy. And she was the most delightful, sweet, smart little kid in the world if she wasn't getting sugar, you know.
yeah.
And she grew out of it, eventually. But as a little kid, things that aren't natural in the body of a little person can be catastrophically more intense than they are, in us old duffers that are used to poisoning ourselves. Our tolerance levels go up.
Right. Well, I think there Josh and I often talk about genetic momentum too. And that like when you come from generations of people who have eaten really well, you actually have some momentum going for you. But
Yeah.
then also it seems like when people eat super well in their childhood, that carries them a really long ways into
Oh,
adulthood.
yeah.
We would always laugh. His grandpa was just as healthy as could be, right up into very old age, not on any medication. And he would always tell stories about, having to milk the cows on at their, they didn't even really live on a farm, but they had a cow and they had a garden and they had,
Yeah.
ate all this great food. But as he was older, we always wondered how he could stay so healthy because after his wife died, he had a rotation of all the fast food places that he ate at every night. He's like, well, Monday night is Jack in the Box and Tuesday night is Pizza Hut. And he had his whole program. We're like, how do you stay this healthy? And we really believe it's just because he ate so well as a child and a young
For so
adult
long. Yeah.
that it just set his body in this great path. I think the
Yeah.
reverse is true too. When you start off with a bunch of junk, it can be hard to regain health.
Yeah. It's lots harder to fix it with veggies when you're 40 if you ate garbage all your life
Yeah,
than it is,
right.
and by the contrast is it's pretty hard to wreck it with a drive-through if you've been eating great all your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about how often a cleanse should not be done, that people do it way too often. What is kind of a ideal cadence, I guess? Like, what
I
does that
think,
look like?
you could argue that we should do it more because we're eating worse.
Hmm.
You could argue that. I say don't eat worse and do it once or twice a year.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, if you're eating really, really bad all the time, cleansing's not going to be super helpful anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not. You have got to be nutrition first. You've
Yeah.
got to be eating decent, uh, and willing to eat and say no to some things. And I'm not saying you never. I went out to lunch today and I did the salad bar because I was being good, and then I had a little ice cream cone afterward.
Right.
So it's mostly good.
Of course it is.
But just try and have as much real food, especially real vegetable food, as you can, and then do a cleanse once or twice a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that sounds so reasonable. Just be reasonable about it, huh?
You know, I probably should have done something more complicated so I could charge more for it. Eat your carrots.
That's the beauty of herbs and of the natural things around us, is that honestly, so many of the healthiest things, we've made the healthy things the expensive things, but that's a human construct, because in actuality, the healthy things around us, the healthiest things, are often the cheapest things. Like, you look at something, I was talking about sauerkraut and the kids eating sauerkraut. When you make your own sauerkraut, it costs a couple bucks. If you grow your own cabbage, it costs like $3 for enough seeds to grow you enough sauerkraut for 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the stuff is almost free. Same thing, something like bone broth, that's essentially a waste product. It's so cheap to make at home. And yet you go and you buy this stuff on the store shelf and you get it in these fancy little refrigerated sections, and they're like $30 for a little quart of the stuff. And you're like, wow, that's expensive. I can make a couple of gallons for less than that costs. And it's such a good thing. And herbs fit right into that in so many ways. They are so inexpensive and so accessible to us if we just learn some of the principles and learn how to do it ourselves a little bit.
And they should be. Yeah. I mean, it should be part of your garden should be an herb garden. Yeah. And any of you guys that haven't seen what Carolyn and Josh are doing with their little family garden outside, the herb garden, I mean, not just the food garden. It's glorious, and it's not huge. And they've got, I can't think of anything you'd need that wasn't out there. You have, and there's not 1,000 species of plants, but it's just this fantastic resource of really amazing nutrients and medicines that's outside your back door and costs you nothing, So.
It's amazing. And it's, once you get those established, so many of those plants are perennials. Once you get them established, they're just kind of there. Yeah. I mean, I'm out there hacking them back now with a hose and machetes and like, too big, too much.
That's right.
But, they're just so abundant and for so inexpensive. It's just the knowledge to actually use them to help yourself. And that's why I love the things. I got to say, I know you're going to say something, but I'm going to brag on you for just a second, because I love the books that you write, because they're so accessible. They're just so easy to understand. And they bring it down to you don't need to go to some fancy school to actually understand the terminology in here. It's very accessible for everybody to just pick this up and be like, oh, I can actually go do something after reading through this. And to me, I find that's just so helpful.
Well, that's the way it is supposed to be. Life isn't nearly as complicated as we like to make it. And the things that that I talk about in my books and the things that we talk about in the Homegrown Herbalist School are things that were just pretty much the way people lived not very long ago. And archaeologists find the herbs we talk about in very primitive societies and digs that they dig up, and so it ain't rocket science, folks, and you really can do it. And just having access, and I know everybody doesn't have a garden, and I understand that, but you'd be surprised what you can grow on a couple of pots on your patio, and you'd be surprised what you can find, in the vacant lot down the road or in the park or forest that's outside of town. I mean, the stuff's around. Yeah. And it's just a tremendous resource. And the same thing with the gardens. You don't need a huge garden to feed yourself and your family. Just grow what you need and enjoy it. And if it's not all you need and you got to buy some too, oh well. I mean, I don't know how much dirt you have or soil, depending on where you get your dirt.
Okay.
But
soil.
But you can do something. You can do something and start with something. But it's a sad commentary on our culture and society that people walk into a store, one of these fancy organic grocery stores, and they see real beets that have never been poisoned, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, I'll pay I'll pay a lot. Do you take payments on those? I want 3, you know.
Yeah,
When you could be
yeah,
growing in your backyard.
right. For almost nothing.
Almost nothing.
Oh, I love it. Okay, before we wrap up, because you and I know, could talk all day. We've done it before. I hope to do it again this year. But what's involved in doing a cleanse? How is there a process for how you should do it, or what does that look like for doing a
Yeah,
healthy cleanse?
a really important process. And the really important process mostly is doing it in the right order. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stimulating organs, kidneys and liver. Well, the kidneys don't care. You can do that part whenever you want. But if you think about the liver, if I make him happier and kicking out more toxins, and he's kicking them into a gut that's all gorked up and mad already, those toxins are just going to get reabsorbed immediately. Right? So you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
So it's really important. The most important principle for a cleanse is to do it in the proper order. And that means you start at the end of the digestive tract and you work your way up. So you do the colon, the large intestine, small intestine, and now they're all happy and everything's working. Well, now we can dump some stuff in there from the liver, right? And it'll all go where it's supposed to go instead of getting reabsorbed. That's the most fundamental principle, probably.
Love that.
But and we go through all that again in the book. There's X number of steps, and you do this one first, and then you do this one, and you kind of work your way through it. But none of the things in there, none of the steps in that process are, hard to do or make you feel lousy or miserable. They're just adding some things to your daily routine that are mostly nutritious and medicinal, and it's not all that alarming.
Yeah. So
You don't have to lay on the bathroom floor to know it's working.
That's good news. That is good news right there. We'll go with that one. All right. So I know we've been talking about the book. Tell us where you can get your book right now. And I know we'll put a link for you guys below, but
Yeah, click the link. That's a good way to do it. Well, we've got them at homegrownherbalist.net, but Carolyn makes nice links. Click her link.
You've got that. And then you talked about, for a second, the kit, that you do have a cleanse kit. So if you're somebody who's just like,
I'll send
I
you a
don't
link
have
for
time.
that too.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So the link, yeah. I mean, you can do all this yourself. If you bought the book and went through it and gathered all the herbs and made all the stuff and yada yada, you could absolutely do that yourself, and it would take lots more time and money than buying the silly kit. We've already got the herbs harvested and poked into bottles, so it'd save you a lot of time. But yeah, that kit is available also at homegrownherbalist.net, and I'll send you the link for it, and you just put that with your book link,
Perfect.
Carolyn, and they can get it.
Sounds
But we've
good.
got all that at homegrownherbalist.net too. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to write a book to impart all this knowledge. I know that's a time-consuming thing, but we're always glad to get a little more information out of your amazing brain.
Well, glad we can help if we're helping.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, like you said, we're living in a toxic world at this point. You can't breathe without bringing in toxins. You can't. I see that. I just have air filters in my house that read the quality of the air, and I'm like, oh, sometimes it's surprising what our air quality is. And I'm like, we would just be breathing this and not even think of, we just found out this year that we had super high levels of radon in the house. And just went through a whole radon remediation. Now it's thankfully way down at very low levels. That's good. But it's like, who knows how long we were breathing that. And, that just comes out of the soil. So it's not, it's just kind of coming out. It's decomposed uranium. Isn't that exciting? And, and so, it's like, you can't even breathe the air. You can't drink water anymore without getting toxins in. And so anything we can do to support our bodies in just normal functions of keeping us healthy and doing what they're supposed to do, that's a win.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we are underfed in a toxic world.
Yeah. That's a happy note to end on.
Go eat some weeds, you'll feel
Go eat
better.
some weeds. That's good. That's a good thing. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for hanging out with us, Doc. Thanks for coming on, like always. And,
Happy
we
to do
look
it.
forward to our next visit.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye bye.